And welcome back to the hot lap. Yes, the Las Vegas Grand Prix qualifying has been finally completed. No issues whatsoever. Unlike free practice one, it was a success. Maybe not so much of a success for some people. We will be getting into that. But first of all, Ferrari on pole would have been a Ferrari 1-2. But alas, it didn't happen because of Sainz penalty. But Leclerc on pole. Verstappen and Ocon pretty much almost collide and ruin each other's lap. Obviously, Verstappen qualifying a lot higher than Ocon, but both have differing opinions on what happened. We'll have a look at that. Also, Perez, wrong call for quali. Perez out of Q2 despite having the first or second fastest car again. Maybe this time not his fault though. He was kept in the pits, but Hamilton laments a terrible qualifying, basically saying it's as fast as he could have gone, and he's hoping that his setup changes are going to be better for the race. Out qualified by Russell, who qualified fourth but starts third. And talking about Russell, he's expecting potentially a disaster for the race. More or less really a disaster in those first few laps on cold tyres. That's the headlines. Ferrari on pole. Let's look at our winners and losers though of qualifying. So let's start with the losers first. The biggest losers, I mean, let's be honest, this guy here, Oscar Piastri, he was top three, and he's really fast in that practice three. What happened to Oscar Piastri? Also, goodness me, Lando Norris, McLaren out of Q3. It's like the beginning of the year all over again. What happened? Slow in those slow corners, but not in Brazil. But let's get on to our winners. Firstly, welcome back. Well, it's America again. You scored points. Will you score points this time? Logan Sargent in the top 10. Absolutely fantastic. Also, Charles Leclerc on pole. By his own admission, he didn't have a good lap, but it was on pole, wasn't it? And last but not least, Alexander Albon. Well done, Alex Albon, as well, in the top 10, out qualifying Logan Sargent. But Williams, James Vowles, absolutely ecstatic, and so they should be. Bear with me. Hello again. So let's look at that grid now. We've got the here it is here. So we've got Leclerc on pole position. Brilliant. Good lap, but as he said, he could have done better. A couple of tenths down is Carlos Sainz. Third is Max Verstappen. And, well, they just looked a couple of steps behind Ferrari all session. Now, is that because the Ferrari can light up its tyres a lot better? But is that lighting up the tyres a lot better going to cost them for the race? People even have suggested that Verstappen at some point was half a second quicker than Leclerc on race pace. However, some other people have suggested that Ferrari is just as fast on race pace. Next up is Russell, who qualified fourth. Not bad at all. Well done, Russell. Out qualifying Hamilton, getting the most, I think, the absolute maximum possibly you could have done out of that car. Also getting the absolute maximum is Pierre Gasly. With Ocon way down there, they may well be reasons. We'll get into that. Pierre Gasly, fifth. Qualifying fifth. Not bad at all. But qualifying sixth and seventh, albeit, yes, we'll look at the grid. It is slightly different. But Mr. Sargent, Logan Sargent and Alex Albon stand up. Albon sixth, Sargent seventh. Absolutely fantastic. Brilliant for Williams. Is that their best qualifying of the year collectively, I think, when you look at both? Could they both score points? Really important in that championship battle as well. Eighth is Bottas. Not bad again. I mean, that Alfa Romeo, sometimes it's the slowest car on the grid, but he definitely did, I think, even compared to his teammate, who did make the top 10, well done, Bottas. Maybe one of his best performances in qualifying. We've got Magnussen in ninth. Nice one, Mag. K-Mag, you needed that as well, didn't you? Because everyone was talking about Hulkenberg being the favourite, Hulk this, Hulk that. But Magnussen this and Magnussen that in ninth. And Alonso, surprisingly, I thought he was going to be a bit faster, but Alonso in 10th. Significantly ahead of at least one of the two Mercedes. But it's interesting that four Ferrari powered cars in the top 10. Does that bode well for Ferrari, or does that bode badly because of this whole tyre thing? Because I think if you remember, I believe the Haas has got the same suspension maybe and gearbox. They do have similar parts, the same parts as the Ferrari car. We'll have to see, but it could also help him in the race. It's quite exciting because I do feel that, okay, maybe Verstappen's going to win because, hey, Leclerc's on pole. When that happens, Verstappen wins. But it's quite exciting to see because I do feel it's quite open as to who is going to do well here. So even if Verstappen rushes off in the distance and Leclerc's got the pace, it's going to be interesting because I really do not think that's going to be your top 10 in that order come the end of the race. But from 10th down to 11th, Hamilton just missing out on Q3, but even he said himself couldn't do any better. He comments we'll have a look at later. Perez, not his fault though. I don't think it would appear his garage kept him in. One could argue you could have done, you should have done a better lap before. But we'll look at that story there. Hulkenberg 13th. Stroll in 14th, albeit he does have a 5-place grid penalty for ignoring yellow flags. Nearly one of our losers, but I could not ignore McLaren, which we'll get into in a second. Ricciardo 15th. Well, Ricciardo, the car doesn't seem to work well, at least in qualifying trim, but at least you out-qualified Tsunoda. That's important if you're a Ricciardo fan. Maybe not so much if you're a Tsunoda fan. But 16th, Lando Norris, the first of the people out of Q3. Horrendous performance. 17th, Ocon. 18th, Zhou. Considering where Bottas qualified, oh dear. Zhou looking like a Sunday pay driver from the 90s there. And then Piastri in 19th. Oh, Piastri. And Tsunoda in 20th. How far have McLaren fallen? I mean, if this is all about the slow corners, that's really bad. I'm just hoping it's maybe a little bit about the slow corners and a lot of the getting those tyres to work in qualifying. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for anyway, as I imagine any McLaren fan will be. But this is it. Verstappen and Ocon. No, that's a cinema film. Yeah, Esteban Ocon. He makes Verstappen blast stupid Esteban Ocon as rivalry renewed. As we know, their rivalry pretty much started officially, let's say, at the Brazilian Grand Prix a few years back when Ocon unlapped himself and then Verstappen hit him. I mean, let's be fair, both sides could have avoided it. Verstappen was leading, why take the risk? Ocon was silly. Should he really have unlapped himself? Who knows? But I'm not going to get into that debate. But this is from planetf1.com. And Verstappen and Ocon, there were odds once more in Q1 with on-track shenanigans, it says. It was typically busy track in those closing stages of Q1. And Ocon and Verstappen found themselves in a scrap, which basically cancelled both of their lap times out. Ocon was the one to pay the price ultimately, though, because he suffered the embarrassment, let's say, compared to Gasly, of that Q1 elimination in a car that could have been, in a top 10 car. Max Verstappen branded Esteban Ocon as a stupid idiot, and Ocon came up behind Verstappen among a cluster of slow-moving cars at the end of the strip straight. Ultimately, he made his way slipstream past Verstappen in a manner which clearly irked Verstappen and potentially could have ruined Verstappen's lap anyway, going into that last corner. And on the run down to the start-finish straight, to begin their final Q1 push laps, Verstappen in his Red Bull closely followed Ocon and lunged down the inside. I mean, not to get a better lap, just to ruin his lap. Here it is on the Formula One website. Here, we'll just take a quick look at it. Yeah, we go. Okay, there we go. There's Verstappen there, and yeah, I mean, he's just lunging there, isn't he? Maybe Ocon shouldn't have got him, but then Verstappen, my lap's ruined, so I'm going to ruin your lap. We saw it in Austria with Verstappen and Hamilton. Is it petty? Yes. Can you understand him? I guess you can. But this is unbecoming, maybe, of a 3-time world champion. Kind of similar to that when they were playing that simulation race, and Verstappen basically crossed the track in the sim race in his car and hit the person that wronged him. Is it becoming of a 3-time world champion? Probably not. Does it give him a bit more character? Yes. Is this the reason why a lot of people like him? Probably. So I guess, what side of the fence are you going to sit? I have no idea, yeah. Moving on. Let's move on, shall we? So Perez, wrong call for quali. This is from racefans.net. A wrong call on strategy led to Q2 elimination. Now, Sergio Perez, He says his Red Bull team made the wrong call on their strategy during qualifying for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. He failed to progress into Q3 for the 9th time. 9 times now. Most of them, let's be fair, his own fault. In 2023 at the Las Vegas Strip, and he was knocked out in 12th place. Now, the Red Bull driver, he sat in the garage during the final minutes of the session, did not head out for a final attempt to improve on his time. He questioned his team. We finished early, no, over the team radio, but could only watch as he was tumbling down the times like a fruit machine simulator thing, whatever. Okay, moving on. We had a strategy before qualifying, he said, with the team. Perez told the media after quali, and he said, we don't know this place, and we were thinking what was the best program, and we went this route. Obviously, after that, it's easy to know it was the wrong call. The high track evolution at the new street circuit allows rivals to improve in the final minutes of Q2, and we see that in Monaco, Singapore, we see that in a lot of street circuits. And what you have to remember down or up in Las Vegas, wherever you are, but in Las Vegas, on street tracks, because particularly here, there's not much running. It's only the F1 cars that are running on the track in terms of actual race cars, so there's not much rubber laying down over the weekend. So that track, because it's only the F1 cars, it's going to keep improving as they lay that rubber down. Perez said, I wasn't aware that much that we were going to finish that early. Now, despite Red Bull's strategy appearing to backfire, Perez admitted that they were not their fastest in qualifying, with Ferrari beating Perez's teammate Max Verstappen to pole. He said, we didn't seem to have the ultimate tenths in it today, so we're lacking a bit of pace out there. Starting outside the top 10, Perez expects there'll be an opportunity to progress. He said, I think deg, as in degradation, could be potentially really high out there, so plenty of things to look at tomorrow. We will see what we will be able to come up with. It's going to be interesting. How far will Perez go up there? Could he get a podium? I think at minimum he needs to finish ahead of Hamilton to make sure he finishes P2 in the championship. Although I'd said yesterday, not really a celebration, is it though, when you look at the amount of points between him and Verstappen and him and the rest of the grid, when you've clearly had the second fastest car throughout the year. And I mean, hey, it says it 9 times you haven't made Q3 this year, mostly down to you not being fast enough. Maybe when the dirty laundry comes out, so to speak, if Perez ever does a book, there'll be a very good reason, and I'll be eating humble pie and enjoying that, and enjoying the book, no doubt, as well, if that's the big revelation. But moving on, we have Hamilton laments a terrible qualifying. This is from Formula1.com, their website. Hamilton rues a pretty terrible qualifying in Las Vegas as he explains the reason for being caught out in his Q2 exit. So Hamilton was left to rue a terrible session after being eliminated, and now it proved to be a challenging outing for Hamilton at the Las Vegas Strip, with the 7-time champion pushing to the drop zone as others were essentially improved on their final laps. He subsequently reported over team radio that he couldn't go faster. Now, meanwhile, the likes of Gasly, Bottas and both Williams progressed, but Hamilton didn't. So speaking to the media after the session, Hamilton was asked how his qualifying had gone, to which he responded, pretty terrible, but it is what it is. It's impressive to see the Williams so high up. I just didn't have any grip out there. I don't think the tyres were working the whole session. Not ideal. It's been a problem I've had for a long time. If you remember a while back, he said he needed to sort out qualifying, and he did kind of go on and up, so to speak, on a crescendo. But I guess it is something he potentially needs to work on for next year. However, if his race pace is suddenly a lot better and he comes through and he can overtake, then maybe we'll be talking about it somewhat differently. Now, in terms of his prospects for the race, in which he looks to start from 10th on the grid due to Carlos taking that 10-place grid penalty, Hamilton voiced his hopes of seeing an improvement. He said, we started the weekend with a lot of degradation, as a lot of people did, a lot of graining, so it'll be really interesting to see. I've made some changes to the car and I'm hoping that works in the races. I don't really feel it rubbering that much, he said. There is track progression naturally. It's getting faster and faster, but not at a crazy steep rate. But that's really what caught me out at the end. So I wasn't able to go quicker, but other people did go quicker at the end. So that's just the way it is. Now, it's a better day, as we know, for George Russell. And we'll be getting into George Russell because this is from motorsport.com. as we know, Vegas F1 track, he says, will be a disaster in the first laps of the race, says George Russell. The author of this is Adam Cooper from motorsport.com. Now, Russell said he didn't care where he qualified for the Vegas Grand Prix because he expects tyre graining to dominate Saturday evening's race, or Sunday morning if you're here in the UK. The Mercedes driver topped the red flag FP3 session and was third in both Q1 and Q2. He then secured fourth in Q3, which will become third due to Carlos Sainz's penalty. He outpaced his teammate, who failed to progress into that final session. Now, Russell believes that graining will be a big issue, that starting positions will be relatively meaningless come the end of the evening. Happy with the result, he then was asked by motorsport.com, I felt confident around the circuit. We weren't expecting to be this competitive coming into the weekend. But to be honest, as strange as it sounds, I wasn't too concerned about where we qualified today as long as we were in the top 10, because it's the biggest unknown of the season. Going to the race tomorrow, we saw huge amounts of graining in all teams. He went on to say, if you can stay within the threshold of not graining, a one stop will be comfortable. But as soon as you start graining the tyres, you have to pit. And I don't think we've done more than 12 laps without graining the tyres. So that's going to be a big challenge. I mean, that's pretty much most of the news here. But let's get into, we've talked about qualifying. So let's open it up to the starting grid. Let's then have a look. And let's then have a look at that starting grid. So this is the official grid, and on Saturday the 18th of November, if it does change, the time. So in pole, we've got Ferrari's Charles Leclerc, second Verstappen, third George Russell in the Mercedes, fourth Gasly in the Alpine, then the two Williams boys on that third row of Albon and Sargent. Well done to them. Equally well done, seventh Alfa Romeo's Bottas. Eighth, we've got Magnussen. Ninth, Alonso in the Aston Martin. 10th, Lewis Hamilton. Disappointing qualifying, but equally disappointing, Sergio Perez. That was not down to him, though, this time. 13th, Hulkenberg. 14th is Ricciardo. 15th, Lando Norris, the first of the very disappointing McLaren. 16th, Ocon. 17th is Zhou. 18th is Piastri. 19th is Stroll. Last but not least is Tsunoda. And remember, Stroll with that 5-place grid penalty, and Carlos Sainz with that 10-place grid penalty, starting 12th. Would have been on the front row had it not been for that rogue drain. Let's also remind ourselves of our winners and losers. Winner Alex Albon in that top 10, starting on that third row, fifth. Absolutely fantastic, but equally fantastic, Charles Leclerc, starting on pole, by his own admission, not his best lap, but it will do nonetheless in his own words. But miracle upon miracles, best qualifying of the year for him. Logan Sargent in the Williams, making James Vowles a happy boy. Not so happy though. Oh, Lando Norris out of Q1. And also Oscar Piastri, despite being quite fast in that third practice session, again out of Q1. Couldn't even make it past the top 16. But will the race be different? This has been the Hot Lap. If you want to like and subscribe, that will be absolutely fantastic. If you've made it to the end, let me know. If you've done if you've done both even, you are a multiple world champion in our eyes. Thank you very much. We'll speak to you probably after the race. What's going to happen? I'm predicting probably a Verstappen victory, a Leclerc on the podium, and I think George Russell will get his second podium of the year. I predict Hamilton, Perez and Sainz also to come through. Will it be chaos? I wouldn't be surprised of a red flag or a safety car after the first lap as well. But maybe all cars will be quite cautious considering. But I'll be very surprised if we don't get at least one or two safety cars, if not a red flag. Let's just hope for a safe, maybe if you want a chaotic race, that's good, but a safe race. No one gets hurt. Wouldn't it be great if we have a surprise winner? There we go. We'll speak to you soon. Thank you.